Any man give his life for Yahweh Shai Mashiach Christ and fall up under that UPK banner is my brother and my blood, and I will die and kill for him if necessary. It's all about that warfare, boy. Back up, it's all about that warfare, boy. Take breath. My soldiers take breath till I'm stand down. Take breath. My soldiers take breath till I'm stand down. Take breath. Now this ain't no movement, this a takedown. We would not be moved or intimidated. We ain't the type. You got a problem? Tell them cross the fucking line. My niggas ain't polite. Soldiers to the left and right. I die for every man body. Before I be a coward, I'd rather be a dead body. This will be my kingdom when the hour plays. You can either get with it or get flipped like an hourglass. We live by honor and no excuse. Just sit the prayer up to the Lord. I told him to let all the terrorists loose. Hold your tongue or get rebuked, cause you made a truce. But a race that made merchandise out of my abuse. Scared of who? You got your gun, then pull it. Me and my niggas started to argue. It's about who gon' bite the bullet. It gon' take round. Opponents better move slow. Attack dog for this truth. Nigga, cool zone. It's all about that warfare, boy. Back up. It's all about that warfare, boy. Take breath. My soldiers take breath till I'm stand down. Take breath. My soldiers take breath till I'm stand down. Oh, thought you could cross us with no consequence, but you will pay daily. You should've used your common sense. My zeal lit, that means you could never prevail. Hey, with a true sin, hey, with warriors dwell. Be wise with the weapons, cause I promise. My nine just like my wife, she concealed, she modest. I know 2 days, a robber will not prosper. And any man harm me and my octave gon' meet the doctor. Cause this life is warfare, it's not an easy walk. Been watching my people die so you can miss me with that love talk. My U.P.K soldiers, any man try to cross your path, make him regret what that means. Fall on his age. Comparing me to you really ain't no contest. The only one west. Say what? The only one west. This for those who thinking we ain't ready for 'em. Tell them back up. I'm about to drop something heavy for 'em. It's all about that warfare, boy. Back up. It's all about that warfare, boy. Take breath. My soldiers take breath till I'm stand down. Take breath. My soldiers take breath till I'm stand down, boy. Warrior with the hands, that's what I'm all about. Hunger in my eyes, vengeance in my mouth. They don't want no altercation. Situation gon' get critical. It's best that you be easy. The end gon' be biblical. Look, flow like a river. It's something like a miracle. Royalty in my veins, loyalty in my ways. Payback in every breath, plus revenge in my heart. The truth in every word. Bring light into the dark. And I ain't never lukewarm. Shit, I blazing in the season. Got plenty food for thought. Just gotta watch who I'm feeding. And I've been walking with them angels. So I guess I got this pistol for no reason. Niggas barely breathing, criticizing all my achievements. Won't make me weak. Nah, it won't make me slack off. These niggas baby fat, so I better bear witness. I'm back off. I be ripping shit like sackcloth. Dumb dogs all barked out. Behind me say I come for. No room for emotion. So I pour my heart out. This road hard, but I intend to stay. And if it ain't UPK, then they in the way. My niggas righteous, they real, they down to something. Flow so deep, they drown a motherfucker. He say he in the truth, oh yeah, bro, this the home. And I don't hate them brothers, I'm just too loyal to my own. Plus what they believe, hard for me to follow. Don't rank me no head, and I ain't leaving this body to live and sleep in hollow. So when they ask I'm UPK, you tell them absolutely. And I ain't trimming my ways for nothing, gotta execute me. Cause I can never die with my tail tucked between my legs. Shit I be thinking, watching my daughters tucked in their bed. They so smart, and Alana, she so beautiful, but they ain't like other babies, and they daddy far from usual. Now I'm missing cause I'm about my father's business. It ain't about this shit I used to do in that 98 Navy, the tan leather seats. See, without wisdom, this world make you weak. I found out that the truth was bitter, the lies are sweet. Tried everything, I guess me and YAHANNA had to meet. Now I make the blind see, and I make the dead speak. And teach both my little girls the day that they lie with a man, they better bring their bloody band sheets. Chaos match the time. This Glock match my handpiece. And I ain't trying to take them out, but I will defend this house. Or take a check. 144 in that black trench on some hitman shit. Should call me 47. Praying for Armageddon. Me and my soldiers dressed for the wedding. Fuck the fame. Ask why, tell them I'm loyal to the king. Until the righteous reign. Loyal to the king. I walk that straight lane to break the chain. Loyal to the king. The devils can't have me, bitch. I'm loyal to the king. Bring the hot flame. You be say loyal to the king. Until the righteous reign. Loyal to the king. I walk that straight lane to break the chain. Loyal to the king. The devils can't have me, bitch. I'm loyal to the king. Bring the hot flame. You be say loyal to the king.
Shalom, shalom. We're back up. Salakia. Yahweh Hashem Ashai Brakatham to all the Akim, all the brothers. Yahweh Shamar Alathah Hashem Yahushai to all the sisters. This is Tuesday night brotherhood class with priest and officer 50 Shar Yawan under commanding General YAHANNA of the I.S.U.P.K. Tonight's class, it has to do with brotherhood, and we're getting into remembering the days of old. That's tonight's topic. Remembering our ancestors, for all blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians. Remembering our ancestors, all the things that they've been through. As a nation of people, all the things that they've accomplished, all the things that they've done good, all the things that they've done bad, and how we can learn from that. You know, history is an important thing. And unfortunately, all blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, we have a lack of identity. So a lot of us don't know who our ancestors were. But in I.S.U.P.K, we've done the research, right? We've done the research, we've studied this Bible, and through a lot of studying, right, the men in the I.S.U.P.K understand that blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians are the real Israelites according to the Bible, right? Some people watching this, they may have never heard of that. They might be hearing this for the first time. But you got to ask yourself, as a Native Indian, Hispanic, or black, who were you before slavery? Right? A lot of people don't know. Calling themselves black, African American, Negro, Hispanic, Latino, Puerto Rican, Haitian, right? A lot of us don't know where we come from. We don't know our culture before history. And I hear something a lot where um, whenever it comes to blacks, Hispanics, or Native Indians asking about their history, a lot of times, or many times, we're told to forget our history, forget the past. Not just by other nations of people, but also from ourselves, other blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians. And to anybody with a conscience, if you're a black, Hispanic, or Native Indian, it's a sensitive topic getting into our history, right? Over the last 400 years, there's been a lot of bloodshed. There's been a lot of horrific crimes going on in our communities that understandably we don't want to talk about. But history can teach us a lot. History can definitely teach us a lot. And I have two articles that I'm going to get into today. One of them's on a brother named Greg Ritchie, who was killed in a shopping mall parking lot January 2019. He was killed, he was gunned down by police officers. All right, that's one of our Indigenous brothers, our Native Indian brothers out in Canada. And another sister, also an Indigenous woman, Indigenous sister. Her name's Cheyenne Santana Marie Fox. And it was reported that, I'll get into the article, but just short, I think it was reported that she had fell off of a balcony downtown Toronto, 24 stories, and the case was unsolved. It was unresolved. But we'll get into that. But the point of bringing up history, you know, things that happened 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago, you know, we bring up history so we can learn from it. If you look at the state of black, Hispanics, and Native Indians today, all of us are living in ghettos. All of us are living in poverty. That's the majority of us. There's a couple of us who you would say in the world we've gotten ourselves together and we've escaped some of the poverty. But even if you're one of those few people, you got aunts, uncles, cousins, nephews who are suffering, right? Living in a place where roaches are crawling around everywhere, rats and mice are crawling around everywhere. Some of us had it worse than others, and it's not to compare, it's just to say that blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians all across the world are living in ghettos. All across the world are in the bottom of societies. All across the world are looked at as less than. And to me, it's a crazy thing to think because we're such a peculiar people. We're such a special people. Again, looking through history, right? The black woman was the first heart surgeon. The so-called black woman was the first heart surgeon, right? We have so many inventions as a people that we've created. And over the years, more and more of that history is coming out, right? The way we dress, the way we talk, the way we carry ourselves. So many people want to be like us, but for some reason, as a nation, we haven't gotten ourselves together yet. We're still on the bottom in a whole bunch of ghettos all across the world. So, getting into history and remembering the days of old, remembering our past, there's things we can learn as a people. There's things that we can learn, right, to get ourselves together as a nation of people so that we can come out of these ghettos, so that we can come out of being at the bottom of society. And to people who are hearing this for the first time, the Bible is a history book. It's a history of the children of Israel. In the Bible, you read about the children of Israel being leaders in the world, rulers in the world, kings and queens in the world. You also read about their destruction as a nation. You read about them being in slavery, enslaved to the Persians, enslaved to the Assyrians, enslaved to the Egyptians, right? You see it from the beginning of Genesis all throughout to Revelation, Israel being enslaved and being at the bottom of society. So reading this book, reading this history book, right, we can learn from the men of old. We can ask our fathers, we can ask our mothers of old time, what went on with them? What were they doing when they grew up? How was their life growing up? What brought them success? Where did they fall as a people? And we can learn from that. So these two articles for Greg Ritchie and Cheyenne Santana Marie Fox, this is a brother and sister who died not too long ago. And as a man in the ISUPK, it's my job to set a memorial for these people. It's my job to care about my brothers and sisters that nobody else talks about, right? There was a comedian who just passed away. I can't remember his name. Could bring up somebody. Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant passed away not too long ago. And all of Israel, or who we would call blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, everybody mourned Kobe Bryant's death. And what did he do with his life? Kobe Bryant, he died in a helicopter. He played basketball for a living, made millions of dollars. But what did he do for his people? What did he do for his nation? Kobe Bryant is a brother, and we have to set a memorial for his life. But we also have to carry about the lives of those that were lost over the years. And that's why I'm going to bring out these two articles. Let's get into it. I'll start with the article on Greg Ritchie, who was 30 years old. He was killed in a shopping mall parking lot in January of 2019. That was only 2 years ago. Now, until I did a little research and looked these articles up, I've never heard of this brother before. This is an Indigenous man who was shot out in Ottawa. Actually, let me share this article so everybody can see. Now, again, history is so important, right? And I know a lot of people tell us to forget, but there's so much we can learn from history. And actually, to that thought, there was a brother I was talking to the other day, and he had asked me, how do I show my kids that they are Israelites according to the Bible? And something his kids said to him was that they said there's a verse in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, that says the children of Israel would go into slavery for disobedience. That was a prophecy regarding the children of Israel. And so when he was talking to his kids, I assume he showed them that verse and said the children of Israel would go into slavery for disobedience. And his kids said, but there's so many nations of people that have been in slavery. How does that really prove that we're Israel? And something our people do all the time, which is such a sad thing, is they really downplay what our nation of people have gone through and what we're going through today. Like blacks came out of West Africa, went into slavery, and there was over 90 million of us killed. And then after being brought over here, the same people that enslaved us, they went and killed over 70 million native Indians. You cannot compare that logically or genuinely to other nations of people that have been enslaved. I think it's very hard for people to fathom how much 90 million people really is. How much 70 million Hispanics and Native Indians that really is. Like the slavery that we've been through is disgusting. It's bloody. It's horrific. It's hard to fathom all the things we've been through as a nation of people. And if you have any sympathy or compassion in you, you can't compare 150 million people to 5 million people who died in the Holocaust. And I'm not saying 5 million people who die in a Holocaust isn't a tragedy, but we should never compare the evils of one nation to another. And if you have any sense of compassion in you, or sympathy or empathy in you, you know over 160 million people. That is a lot of people. That is a lot of deaths. That is a lot of murder, right? I, I've heard I've heard Irish people compare themselves to what blacks went through, blacks and Hispanics went through. And just look at the history, right? We're here in 2021, and blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians have no idea who they were before slavery. They don't have a clue who they were before slavery. That's a disgusting thing for the people who oppressed us to do to a nation of people, right? When are you going to tell the people who they were before slavery? When are you going to give them their identity back? And that's only one prophecy of countless prophecies about where the children of Israel would be for disobedience, right? So I just say that to say that there's a lot we can learn from history. I'm going to move forward a bit. I could probably talk on this for hours, but the people that have passed away, we got to commemorate these people. Every single one of them. Every last one of them. And the men and the women in the I.S.U.P.K, we care about every single one of our brothers and sisters. If you're a man who's living on the streets and you lost your life, we care about you. If you're a woman who's living on the streets, you lose your life. The people in the I.S.U.P.K, the men and the women in the I.S.U.P.K, we care about you. We're going to remember you. And it's our job, it's our duty to make sure things like this that go on in our community change. Right? We got to come together as a nation. We got to come together, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians. We got to learn from our past. We got to learn from our past mistakes. We got to do better. And in the Bible, if you read the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, you'll see that when our nation listens to the Most High, blessings come upon our nation. We have kings and queens and rulership. We have our own land, own government, right? Our own school systems, our own way of life, separate from the other nations. And we strive and we treat each other well. We treat each other good. We're good brothers and sisters to each other. You know what I mean? And that's what we got to come back to. Because right now we're at the bottom. Right now we're in a slavery. This brother, Greg Ritchie, he was shot by a police, right? He's in his hell. He's not in his kingdom. This brother had a tough life. He struggled. and his life was ended at the age of 30. So I'm gonna get into the article. So Greg Ritchie, 30 years old, was killed in a shopping mall parking lot in January 2019. Ontario's police watchdog says no charges are warranted in the January 2019 death of an Indigenous man shot and killed by 2 Ottawa police service constables. Greg Ritchie, 30 years old, was fatally shot on the morning of January 31st, 2019, in the parking lot of the Elmvale Acres shopping mall. Police were investigating what they called a suspicious incident in the area when they came across Ritchie, a member of the Saugeen First Nation near Owen Sound, Ontario. Audio from Broadcastify, an online service that provides access to emergency dispatch calls, indicated a man dressed in black and wearing a baseball hat with the word dope on it had been seen walking into the mall holding a knife in his hand. So this brother went to the mall, something that's common amongst our people, and that's Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, is that this brother was profiled, right? He's wearing black, he looks suspicious. He has a hat on his head with the word dope. And he had been seen walking into the mall holding a knife in his hand. Right? This is an Indigenous man. This brother may have not known it, his family may have not known it, but they're from the tribe of Gad. Right? Those are our native Indians. And these brothers and sisters, they descend from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Right? These are princes and princesses of the power. Right? When we were in our rulership, right? As Israelites, the men of Israel, we were kings. The women in Israel, they were princesses. Right? We have royalty in our blood. A lot of us don't know that. After an encounter with the 2 police officers, later identified as constables Tan Tran and Daniel Vincelet, Ritchie was shot 3 times and was pronounced dead in the hospital. His family later told CBC News he'd struggled with mental illness from a young age.
Here are some results.
And was heading to a pharmacy to pick up medication when the altercation happened. So now, let me zoom in a bit. I don't know how well you guys can see the screen. So this is one of the officers, Constable Tran, one of the police officers um, who was there that day. And what's crazy about this is this brother that was walking through the mall, who claimed to be seen with a weapon, suspicious. He was going to, what does it say? He was going to pick up his medication. And this article reads, at least nine shots were fired at this brother. According to the report released Friday by Ontario Special Investigation Unit, when the officers encountered Ritchie, he was carrying a 40-centimeter long stick with a rock attached to one end. Now, I don't even know how to comment on that. There was two police officers, and they see a brother carrying a 40-centimeter long stick with a rock attached to one end. And that ends up with 9 shots being fired at this guy. Like, for lack of a better word, like these cops are just soft. these cops, he has a 40-centimeter long stick with a rock attached to it, and that warrants 9 shots being fired. And I'm going to show you guys the weapon in a second. Ritchie had taken to crafting and selling these items, cultural artifacts born of his indigenous heritage, said the report from SIU Director Joseph Martino. After one of the two constables tried to talk to him, Ritchie grew frustrated and began to threaten the officer. When the second officer approached him, Ritchie moved toward him, stick in hand, prompting the second officer to fire his taser twice, the report said. Now, I zoomed in, and I really hope everyone can see this. I really hope everyone watching can see this. And my condolences go to the family of Greg Ritchie, who lost their son, their cousin, their nephew, their uncle, their brother to this madness, because you can see this brother, you know, he was sticking to his indigenous roots. He was trying to hold on to something that his parents taught him or showed him, a way of life growing up. And this brother, even though he had some mental issues, you know, this is something that he did, you know, just as a hobby. This is something he did as a side hustle, just to sell and make some money off. And this is literally, it looks like a tree branch almost. A small tree branch with some rope attached to it, and a little rock attached to it. And these officers are saying that this looked like an axe. That's such a sad thing to see. This happened out in Ottawa. Under the picture, it says this was the object that Greg Ritchie swung at an Ottawa police officer shortly before he was shot and killed in January 2019, according to the Special Investigation Unit. Like that's sad, man. And that's happening to our people all over the world. It's happening a lot to our brothers and sisters in Babylon, in America, right? Like tragedies like this are happening to our people nonstop, and it's such a sad and disgusting thing to see. So again, I say, like, we gotta look into the past. We gotta remember our history so that we can learn what to do to rise as a nation. My heart goes out to this brother's family, and hopefully, if you guys tune in one day, I want you to know that the ISUPK, we're also your family. We're also your brothers and sisters, right? All the indigenous, native Indian people, Hispanic people, blacks, we're all family. We all got to come together and rise as a nation. Um, I'll share this article in the chat if anybody wants to look into it more on their own. Just for time's sake, I want to get into the next article. And this is a story about a sister. Her name's, oh, let me see if I can share that. Salakia, one moment. Oh, that's not it. No, why isn't it popping up? Salakia, one moment, bear with me. Ah, there we go. Zoom in a bit. So this is a sister. This is a sister named Cheyenne Santana Marie Fox. Again, my condolences. May she rest in power. May she rise again in power. This is a sister. She was a member of the Y.A.P.K First Nation on Manitoulin Island, Ontario. This is an Indigenous woman out of Canada. This is our sister. I'm gonna get into her story a bit. And this is again this is to remember the things that's going on in our communities. Everyone see it, that's shared. So I'll try to get through this quickly. So this is a sister named Cheyenne Santana Marie Fox. She was the proud mother of a 5-year-old son and member of the Y.A.P.K First Nation on Manitoulin Island, Ontario. Her father described her as someone who was kind and approachable. Cheyenne was a no-nonsense kind of girl, the daughter of John Fox Sr. This is another brother, an Indigenous brother. Said adding his daughter was also very accepting of others. On the evening of April 25, 2013, Cheyenne's lifeless body was found below a Toronto high-rise, where she had landed after plunging from the 24th floor. Toronto police determined there was no evidence of criminal activity in Cheyenne's death, but her father strongly believes his daughter was murdered. They didn't really do any more other than what they had in front of them. They didn't want to research, Fox said. In September 2014, Fox filed a statement of claim on behalf of Cheyenne's estate against the Toronto Police Service, the Attorney General of Canada, and two individuals for $14 million, alleging negligence in the response to several 911 calls made on behalf of and by Cheyenne that eventually led to her death. So this sister, before she was either jumped or pushed off of this building, she had made several 911 calls, and it appears that there was no response, or there was a negligence in the response to the calls. The claim alleges that Cheyenne was a victim of human traffickers who befriended her and exploited the fact that she was a vulnerable young Indian woman. Their alleged intent was to convert her into an involuntary sex worker. The claim states in part, Toronto police have not yet filed a statement of defense. On the day she died, Cheyenne was also the victim of an alleged sexual assault by a Toronto taxi cab driver, which led her to jump from the taxi along Highway 410 around 6 p.m., the claim states. Two individuals made the first call to the police, reporting that they witnessed her jump out of the taxi. Shortly after, she ended up in an apartment at 80 Harrison Boulevard in North York, at the behest of one of her alleged traffickers to meet a so-called customer. A second call came from the apartment around 11 p.m., reporting a fight between Cheyenne and the male customer, though it wasn't clear who made that call. According to the claim, although Cheyenne was in serious danger because she was a victim of sexual exploitation, Toronto police still did not respond. The court document states that Cheyenne made several attempts to leave the suite before engaging in further excessive drinking. Toronto police only responded to the last call when the customer reported Cheyenne had jumped over his balcony, the statement of claim says. At 11 p.m., Cheyenne's body was found by Toronto police. The statement of claim says in failing to respond to the calls, police breached the applicable standard of care owed to Cheyenne. So it just sounds like this sister had a long night. The police want to allege that she was a part of sexual trafficking. She was a sexual, what do you call it? A worker, maybe or another word, maybe a prostitute. However, this woman was 20 years old. She had a 5-year-old son. And a lot of these things we're reading, these are all allegations. We don't know if it's true or not. And that whole night for her sounded like it was a tough night. So I want to move down a bit to get through this. Fox is her father. Fox said police told him the male who was with Cheyenne last was supposed to take a lie detector test, but according to Fox, that was never done. Eventually, police closed the case and told Fox the male was too traumatized to do the test, he said. That's a shame. He's traumatized, but she's the one who lost her life. Toronto police told CBC News that the cause of death was determined to be impact trauma, and after an investigation, interviews, and a determination by the coroner's office, there was no evidence of criminal activity. The case remains open, and if new information arises, it will be investigated, police said. So I skipped over a couple things, but this is just to say this particular case is still open. Um, from what I researched, and this is an Indigenous woman who lost her life, and I haven't heard anybody talk about her before. I've never heard of this story before, and this is one of many stories that I brought out tonight, but specifically this story came from a website where it talks about missing Indigenous women in Canada. And there are hundreds of these cases going on all the time. Like there is no Slovakia. There is no end to how many times I hear people talking about Indigenous women going missing. There's a reservation that I went to not too long ago, and they actually have a billboard. They have a billboard up maybe 5 minutes before you get on the reservation, and the billboard says, "Please stop stealing our women." Like that's got to be hell for all those women living on reservations. To actually put up a billboard and plead with society to say, "Please leave our women alone." I couldn't get through all these stories because a lot of them were too sad to read. And if you guys can stomach reading through it, I will absolutely leave the link so you guys, anybody watching, can read through it. But a lot of these stories going on with these Indigenous women, there's a lot of unsolved cases, women's bodies being found frozen or found in parks or ditches. These women going missing. They've been missing for 10 years. Nobody knows where they are. And that's hell for our women. That is absolute hell for these women. And that is absolutely hell for all these brothers who are their family members, trying to deal with all these losses. Like we have to remember the past. We have to remember our history. We have to get into this Bible and see how we had success as a nation of people, so that we can get out of these conditions. So let's get into. I'm going to get into some scriptures. For those who are following the brother class, I had gotten into a bit of Tobit before. I didn't touch on it too much, but right now we're going to get a little deeper into who this brother Tobit was and what he did for our people. Salakia. Salakia. So yeah, we're gonna get into the brother Tobit. For those who are following the class, I had spoken about Tobit a bit before. For those just tuning in for the first time, um, there's a book of Tobit in the Bible. There's a book of Tobit in our history book, and this brother was a very honorable man. He absolutely loved his people. He absolutely cared for his people, not just the rich, but also the poor. You know, everybody that was a part of his nation, those are the people he cared about. And I bring him up to say, if we could learn from our ancestors, if we can look at our history and look at a brother like Tobit and how he carried himself, and we could emulate the way he lived his life, we could rise as a nation. Our brotherhood would be so much stronger if we carried ourselves the way Tobit did. All right, so let's get into these scriptures a bit. I'm going to start in the book of Tobit, chapter 1 and verse 10. So Tobit, the book of Tobit, chapter 1 and verse 10. And when we were carried away captives to Nineveh, all my brethren and those that were of my kindred did eat of the bread of the Gentiles. So now, this brother Tobit, what we're reading about right now, he was, this is when Israel was in their Assyrian captivity. They were under the captivity of the Assyrians. And this is the account of Tobit going into Nineveh and some of the things that he saw, that he witnessed, how he carried himself, how he treated his people, what he did for his people. And so verse 10 says, and when we were carried away captives in Nineveh, all my brethren, his brethren being the children of Israel, and those that were of my kindred did eat of the bread of the Gentiles. Now, when it says bread of the Gentiles, that's talking about their customs, their ways, the way the Gentiles carried themselves, the way the Assyrians carried themselves. We would look at that today, and that would be things like eating pork, celebrating Christmas, celebrating Valentine's Day, celebrating Thanksgiving, eating shrimp. Those were the ways of the Gentiles. That had nothing to do with our customs as a nation of people. Those aren't the things that we did as a nation of people, the nation of Israel, who would be blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians today. Verse 11. Verse 11 reads, but I kept myself from eating. And what he's saying here is that he didn't keep the way of the Gentiles. He kept himself from eating. That analogy, he didn't smoke, he didn't smoke weed, he didn't celebrate Christmas, Thanksgiving, Valentine's Day. He kept himself from eating the ways of the Gentiles. Verse 12. Because I remembered God with all my heart. Now, again, the title of this class has to do with remembering the past, remembering the days of old. When Israel was in Egypt, right? We had an exodus. We got out of our captivity in Egypt, and we were given rules. We were given laws, statutes, and commandments on how to govern ourselves as a nation of people. And when we were given those things, we were told if we listened, we would be blessed. If we didn't listen, we would be cursed. So Tobit remembered what his ancestors went through coming out of Egypt. He remembered the laws, statutes, and commandments that were given to our ancestors. He remembered when Israel went into captivity for disobeying the laws, statutes, and commandments. Right? He looked at his ancestors. He saw the good they did, the bad they did, and he wanted to repeat the good. Right? He understood that the things that happened in history, you can learn from. I think it's in Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy, it says, remember the days of old. Ask your fathers in many generations, or inquire of your fathers in many generations to seek out what they did. There's so much knowledge in our history, wisdom and understanding that can help us as a nation do better, do right, do good. And that's what we're being taught in the I.S.U.P.K. And that's what we're trying to teach brothers and sisters, Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians that aren't in the I.S.U.P.K, so that they can also change their life and do better. Tobit remembered God with all his heart, right? He remembered the strength of his power. He remembered how Yahweh carried Israel out of Egypt. Verse 13, and the Most High gave me grace and favor before Enemessar, so that I was his purveyor. And what that word purveyor means, that's like a salesman or a broker, somebody who does sales. And when Tobit was in this captivity, he found grace with the Most High. He found the Salakia. The Most High gave him grace. The Most High gave him mercy, and he was able to find favor before Enemessar, the king. And so, picture today, there's somebody being successful in Canada, right? An indigenous man, let's say he leaves a reserve, he wants to join the rest of the Canadian society, and he buys a big $1 million home, has a good job, his family's doing well. That's what happened with Tobit. Tobit found success in his oppression. He found success when his nation of people were in slavery. Verse 14, and I went into Media and left in trust with Gabael, the brother of Gabrias, at Rages, a city of Media, 10 talents of silver. So Tobit was doing well for himself in this captivity. Tobit was doing well for himself in this kingdom, and he went to a brother and he gave him some money to hold. Verse 15. Now when Enemesser was dead, Sennacherib was son reigned in his stead, whose estate was troubled that I could not go into Media. So Enemesser the king, he died, and his son Sennacherib reigned in his stead, whose estate was troubled that I could not go into Media. So Enemesser the king was the one who gave Tobit his position. Enemesser was the one who gave Tobit that, you could say, that job that he had that allowed Tobit to have some success in that kingdom. And when Enemesser died, now it's saying in verse 15, now his son's in power. Right? Today, there was a company I worked for, and the boss liked me a lot. You could say I worked hard for him. I made him some money, and after working for him for a year, his son, who spent 5 years learning the business, took over his place, and that man became my boss. So working for that my first boss, I had some favor with him. But when that new boss came up, when his son came up, all that went out the window. The way he looked at me, the way he treated me, all that went out the window. And that's what's happening here in verse 15. And verse 16 says, "And in that time of Enemesser I gave my alms to my brethren, and gave my bread to the hungry." So in the time of the other ruler, when Tobit was doing well, when he had that favor with the king, he was giving gifts to his brother, right? He was doing well. He had a good position. He had a good job, and he was helping his people out. There's a lot of celebrities today that we love to support, we love to endorse. We'll wear their basketball jerseys, we'll buy their football shoes, their football jerseys. We'll support these brothers to no end. They'll make tons of money, and they're not they're not giving back to their brothers and sisters. They're not helping their people, right? They're singing and dancing and playing sports for their oppressor, for this kingdom. They're getting paid millions of dollars to do so. But where are all the men, where are all the women who are in these positions helping out their brothers and sisters? This is what Tobit was doing. Tobit had a good position in that kingdom under that Assyrian captivity. And he went out and helped his people. Right? That's our job, that's our duty. If we're successful in life, if we're making a lot of money, that's not just for our gain. We got to help the poor, we got to help the sick, we got to help the needy. What is it to give somebody $30, get them three big bags of rice? Spend $10, get them 10 packs of pasta. Another $10, get them 10 cans of pasta sauce so that they can eat. Right? This is something Tobit did. This is something we can learn from our ancestor. We can learn from our history on how to help our nation as a people. Verse 16 says, "And in the time of Enemesser, I gave many alms to my brethren, and gave my bread to the hungry." Right? He didn't get out of the ghetto, go marry a white woman, forget about his people in the ghetto, and just leave them to fend for themselves. Right? That's what a lot of our people are doing today. That's a sad thing. I've had a couple conversations with people, and they've sat and told me, well, I'm successful. I don't live in the ghetto. I'm not struggling. But two of your cousins are living in the ghetto. Or slack you, two of your brothers are living in the ghetto. Your younger sister's doing okay. Your other brother, he's in and out of jail. What about them? You got another brother stealing so that he can survive, stealing to make his rent, pay his bills. What about him? Tobit didn't forget about those people. Right? Verse 17. "And my clothes to the naked. And if I saw any," Salakia, verse 17 at the start, and it says, "And my clothes to the naked." Right? Tobit helped his people. Tobit helped his brother. He helped his nation. He gave clothes to the poor, clothes to the naked, alms to his brethren. He helped his people out. That's what we got to do. "And if I saw any of my nation dead, or cast about the walls of Nineveh, I buried him." Now, Tobit's seen his nation of people in captivity. He's seen his nation of people in slavery. He's seen his nation of people being mistreated. Right? He's seen this government, this kingdom, murder his brethren. And he's going out and burying the dead. He's finding the bodies of his brethren, and he's giving them a memorial. Right? That article. He didn't forget Greg Ritchie. He didn't forget Cheyenne. He went out, gave those people, his brothers, his sisters, a proper memorial. He cared about all his brothers and sisters. He cared about the poor. That's how we got to move as a nation of people. I remember going to Montreal not too long ago, and Salakia, my brother's here right now.
Shalom, Lord in Christ.
Shalom, Lord in Christ. I was literally about to tell a story about you.
Story about me?
Yeah. And like I was saying, like Tobit loved his brother. He loved his people. And my brother right here who just joined, I remember we were in Montreal and we woke up early morning to get breakfast. You know,
Right.
all the brothers were hungry, and we were coming back to the Airbnb we were staying at, and you know, this honorable, respectable brother with no hesitation, you know, he gave his breakfast, he gave part of his breakfast to a poor man, a man who you could clearly see was going through something. He was sleeping in the middle of the street overnight. He gave this brother his food. He gave this brother part of his breakfast. Right? This is what Tobit did. Right? He cared about all his people. The things we're doing in the I.S.U.P.K, this is what's gonna help our nation rise. When we come together, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, and we help each other, that's gonna build our nation. Right? We gotta
Right.
learn from Tobit. We gotta learn from officers and bodies.
Salakia, Ak, if I may.
Khan, go ahead.
Even for that, like, same story, like, that wasn't the first time I seen a Gadite sleeping on the curb, right? Like, if you go down to Queen and Dundas, and even Bathurst and Dundas, you'll see Gadites sleeping on the curb, like that's their house, right? So it wasn't the first time I seen that. What made me care is finding out that those are my brothers, right? If it wasn't for the ISUPK under Commanding General YAHANNA, I wouldn't even care,
Right,
right? The ISUPK opened up my eyes to seeing that the Gadites are my brothers, and they're going through the same struggles that I'm going through,
right,
that blacks and Hispanics are going through.
right, right. That's it. And like I said, these are the things that are gonna change our nation. Right? When we come together as a people, when we build each other up, when we support each other, right?
Right.
We treat each other with love and respect, kindness, right? Those are the kinds of things that's going to build our nation. So I was in Tobit. I'm at verse 18, chapter 1 and verse 18, if you want to follow along.
Kana, uh, you want? I'm gonna read it for you, Ak.
Okay, Khan, go ahead. So go from 18 to 19,
Kanak,
and then we'll jump to chapter 2.
Kanak. Let me just catch up with you. Okay, I got it. Tobit 1 and 18. And if the king Sennacherib had slain any when he was come and fled from Judea, I buried them privily.
Right. So this king, Sennacherib, this is the son of Enemesser. You know, this king came up, and you could see he had a whole bunch of hatred towards Israel, right? He,
Right.
he was he was an evil ruler. He grew up just like how some of our oppressors are growing up today. They're watching they're watching us rap, sing, and dance with our clothes. Some of these women half naked. These brothers going around in their videos with guns and this and that, carrying themselves in a certain way. And this oppressor grew up to hate us. He looked at us like less than. And when he became king, he started to slay us. He started to kill us. And what's so heavy is Tobit says, I buried them privily. Privily, that means privately. Tobit was going out, he was burying all his people, all his brethren. He was giving a memorial, a proper burial to all his brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? Keep reading.
Karnak. For in his wrath he killed many, but the bodies were not found. When they were sought for of the king.
Right. So this king was going around looking for the bodies. He was trying to find these dead bodies, all the blood that he was shedding of the children of Israel. And he couldn't find these bodies because this stand-up brother Tobit, he was going around burying all these bodies. And we got to remember that he had a position with his father. He had a good position with his father. And when it came time to, was he about his people or was he about himself? He sacrificed his position for his people. He didn't care what position he had under Enemessar. He was going around burying the bodies of his brethren. Keep reading.
Karnak. Verse 19. And when one of the Ninevites went and complained of me to the king, that I buried them and hid myself, understanding that I was sought for to be put to death, I withdrew myself for fear.
Right. Tobit risked his life to bury his brothers and sisters. And someone went to the king and snitched on him. Somebody went out and said, this brother's going around burying all these dead bodies. Got to do something about this guy. And so Tobit went on the run. Right? He risked his life to bury those bodies. Let's jump down to Tobit chapter 2.
Karnak.
And we're going to go from verse 1. Where do we stop? We can go from verse 1 to 10. We'll see how far we get.
Karnak, no sweat. Tobit 2, verse 1. Now when I was come home again, and my wife Anna was restored unto me, with my son Tobias, in the feast of Pentecost, which is the holy feast of the 7 weeks, there was a good dinner prepared me, in the which I sat down to eat.
Right. So check this out. Our nation of people, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, we love to feast.
Right.
Right? We love to get together with family, have a big meal, right? Eat, get that itis,
Right.
right? That's something that's a part of our culture. That's something that we do. And so this is something Tobias and his family was doing right now. Keep reading.
Con. And when I saw abundance of meat, I said to my son, go and bring what poor man soever thou sought, Salakia. Go and bring what poor man soever thou shalt find out of the brethren,
Wait,
Salakia, out of our brethren.
out of a heathen,
Out of our brethren.
out of a Moabite,
Out of our brethren.
out of an Ishmaelite,
Out of our brethren.
out of an Edomite.
Out of our brethren.
Tobias told his son to go look for a poor man out of our brethren, right? Israel's in captivity, and Tobias was doing nothing but helping his people. He didn't say go find an Assyrian who's struggling in his kingdom.
Right.
He said go find a poor man out of our brethren. Keep reading.
Come. Salakia. Who is mindful of the Lord.
Right.
And lo,
Who's mindful of the Lord. Like this isn't to be I'm not telling anybody to go um find a homeless man who has some mental disease and bring them into your house, right?
right.
Definitely got to show mercy and grace to this brother. They absolutely need it. But Tobias was telling his son, go find a man, a poor man, who's mindful of Yahweh, right? Somebody who's just a little fearful of what the Most High will do with them or do to him for disobedience. Somebody who's a little worried about stealing. Someone who's a little worried about killing,
Right.
right? Don't just bring anybody into the house. Not saying that Tobias wouldn't, because he was all about his people. But if you can help a brother out, if you can help a poor man out, right, regardless of his situation, help that brother out. And so at this point, Tobias and his family, they're celebrating a feast, right? They're about to yam a whole bunch of good food. And so he's telling his son, go find a poor man. Somebody who just wants some food. Go invite him over to our house to eat. Keep reading.
Salakia, 1 second. And lo, I tarry for thee.
Read.
Verse 3. But he came again and said, Father, one of our nation is strangled and is cast out in the marketplace.
Right. Uh, so Tobias' son went out and he saw a man that was killed. He saw a man that was killed and thrown into the marketplace. A marketplace is somewhere where a whole bunch of people can see you, right? A big crowd can see you, right? This is how they were treating Israelites in the Assyrian captivity. They didn't give a damn about us. They didn't give a damn about Cheyenne,
Right?
right? They didn't care about her case. They didn't care about Greg Ritchie, right? There's so many cases that are unresolved of indigenous women going missing. We're getting the same treatment today that we were then.
Salakia, Ak.
John, go ahead.
I wanted to speak on that because I was listening earlier while I was waiting for the computer to boot up and stuff. Like you were speaking on her case, the sister's case, right? And from what I heard, it says her case is still open,
Right.
right? So it's open, but opened under what category? like a suicide gets closed, right? Is it
Right.
a suspicious death? Is it a homicide? Like a suspicious death is like something where it's like it seems like weird, like she shouldn't have died like this, like there was marks on her, but it didn't seem like a real sign of struggle, right? So the case is still open for what, right?
So
Like what are you ruling it as? That's what I'm asking. Like what are they ruling the case as? A homicide or
right. So I don't know all the specifics of the story of the case,
con?
but from what I have read is that they are trying to say she committed suicide. They're trying to say she jumped off the building, but they can't prove it. So for that reason, the case is still open, and that's my understanding of the story so far. I'm
Okay.
I'm not sure what they classify that under. Um, just from reading the article, it says the case is open still. So you might understand that all that court case stuff, whatever, better than I do, but I don't exactly know what it's classified under.
Con. I got you out. That it's just weird because it's like it seems like they want to rush to market a suicide so they can forget about it because
Right,
they honestly do not care about blacks, Hispanics, or Native Americans when it comes to our murder. Like especially if it's at the hands of an oppressor, right? For an example, like there was a time when the neighborhood I grew up in was going through a lot of shootings, right? And I myself was a victim of circumstances and that neighborhood, right? And it's like one day the same police that they're supposed to be out there trying to solve these crimes, they told a group of us, listen, we know that people are coming to the neighborhood and shooting up the neighborhood, right? Just try to keep the shootings to nighttime. Like we don't care if you want to go and shoot each other. Just keep it to nighttime, right? Now for the young men that they were talking to, none of those men ever participated in a shooting,
right,
right? But they were telling them keep the shooting to a nighttime, right? They honestly don't care. So for them to mark her case down as as a potential suicide and leave it open, like I understand leaving it open now if you're gonna mark it as a potential suicide, but it's like, damn, like y'all could find Saddam Hussein in a hole, but you can't find whether
right,
this sister was killed or not.
right,
Y'all could go and find Osama bin Laden, but you can't find the what you can't tell us what happened to our sister.
right. Absolutely. They don't give a damn about us.
Right.
All right. They never have, and it's not gonna change. It's not gonna change in 2022, 2025. They're gonna look at us the same. They're gonna treat us the same. You know what I mean? That's never gonna change.
Right.
Were we in verse 3?
Con on.
Okay, so yeah, to that, they killed Tobias' son. Found some one of the children of Israel strangled, or one of the children of Israel dead. Right? They just threw this body out in the marketplace for everyone to see. Keep reading, verse 4.
Con on. Tobias 2, verse 4. Then before I had tasted any meat, Salakia, then before I had tasted of any meat, I started up and took him up into a room until the going down of the sun.
Right. Tobias already had a warrant on him. The king was already looking for him. Right? Somebody went and snitched to the king and told him about what Tobias was doing. And regardless of what was going on with Tobias, he went out and took and found his body, right? He went out in the open, found his brother's body so that he could give him a proper burial. Tobias wasn't a coward. Tobias wasn't fearful. He wasn't worried about going to prison. Tobias loved his people, and he had a job to do. He was going to commemorate his brother. He was going to give his brother a proper death, a proper burial. And he stopped his feast. He put down what he was doing before he tasted that good meal. You know what I mean?
Right.
He ran out there and he grabbed his brother's body. Keep reading.
Verse 5. And then I returned and washed myself and ate my meat in heaviness.
Right. He came back. He cleaned himself up.
Salaki, I think that was heaviness.
Heaviness. He came back. He cleaned himself up. He had a whole bunch of things going on in his mind. You know? What he just witnessed, it was something heavy, something weighing on him. The Assyrians threw this body out in the marketplace like it was nothing. And what he witnessed, you know what I mean? He felt for his brethren. He felt for his brothers and sisters. Keep reading.
Verse 6. Remembering that prophecy of Amos, as he said, your feast shall be turned into mourning, and all your mirth into lamentation.
Right. Tobias knew the history of his ancestors. Right? Tobias knew what happened to the children of Israel in times past. He knew the prophecies regarding what would happen to his people if they didn't listen. Right? This topic has to do with remembering the past. Slakia, can you grab Amos chapter 8 and verse 7 for me? And keep holding Tobit. I'll be right back in 2 minutes. Salakia, give me 1 second. I just got to deal with something.
Okay,
one moment.
You said Amos 8 and 7?
We're going to read Amos 8 from chapter 8, verse 7 to 10.
So as we wait for Officer Shah-Yuan to come back, like when you go back to Tobias, and when you go back to verse 2 and you see that he was about to eat, right? He was about to sit down to eat a good meal after doing a whole bunch of work for his people, after burying all his people. He basically decided that he wanted to feed the poor, that's something that you don't see of our so-called leaders. They don't come out to feed the poor. The Christian church is definitely not coming out to feed the poor, right? Every grandma, auntie, and sister in every ghetto and barrio, they go and give their money to the Christian church, and they're still poor. The Christian church, they eat well, and they don't mourn when they see us dying. They rarely speak up about us dying. Salaki, I'm gonna give the class back to Officer 50 Shariwan.
Right. So let's
I
get
have that
into
verse whenever you're ready.
Kana. Go ahead when you got it.
Salaki, one moment. Amos 8 and verse 7. The Lord has sworn by the excellency of Jacob. Surely I will never forget any of their works.
Right. So this was a prophecy regarding the children of Israel. Right. And Yahweh was saying, I will not forget any of their works. Keep reading. You can jump to verse 9. Just go to verse 9 and 10.
Come on. One moment. Amos 8, verse 9. And it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord God, that I will cause the sun to go down at noon, and I will darken the earth in the clear day.
Read.
Verse 10. And I will turn your feast into mourning, and all your songs into lamentation. And I will bring up sackcloth upon all loins, and baldness upon every head. And I will make it as the morning of an only son, at the end thereof as a bitter day,
Right.
and the end thereof as a bitter day.
Right. Let's jump back to Tobit. So Tobit understood, right? There was a prophecy that would happen to the children of Israel. And what Tobit was doing right now, man, he was in mourning. This Amos 8 and verse 10 said this was a bitter day. This was a
Right.
sad day in Israel. This is something that happens to blacks and Hispanics and Native Indians all the time. This is what we're going through right now. Right? We have hundreds, thousands of bitter days. Right?
Right.
On this day, Tobias, he was keeping a feast day. He was about to celebrate a feast day. And on this day in his captivity, he was in mourning. Right? This was a bitter day. This was a sad day. He was lamenting on this day. Right? And again, I bring this up to say, like, when I say we got to remember the days of old, again, you're hearing this for the first time. Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, you are the children of Israel. And you're living out one of your punishments for disobedience. Our forefathers disobeyed the Most High, and we're feeling it today. The Christian church, Salakia, I don't know if I have a better word for this, so Salakia for my swearing, but a lot of people have learned to treat God like a bitch.
Right.
Like, if you're if you kick a dog, that dog's gonna run back to you with its tail wagging. But we know if you move your father to wrath, you do something against your father's will, he tells you not to do something, you do it anyway. Like you know good and damn well you're about to get punished. Right? You come home, you tell your dad you didn't do your homework, or the school calls your home and tells your dad you didn't do your homework, and he feels any kind of shame, you know to run from your dad. You know to be scared of your dad. Right? For me, and for a lot of brothers who grew up without a father, right? I had an uncle who I was terrified of. I remember one time I did something wrong, and he brought me in a room, he closed the door, and that was like one of the darkest one of the darkest moments in my life. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like as a kid, just looking at a male figure getting ready to punish you or discipline you, right? You understand that it's about business. The Christian church, you guys walk all over the Most High. Do what you want, say what you want, act how you want, and say, "Don't worry, He's gonna forgive me again and again and again." Like we can't treat the Most High like that. We can't look at Him as if He's some punk who's not gonna discipline us or judge us, correct us, so that we can be better. Like what He says comes to pass. Tobias right here, he was remembering the days of old, and he's witnessing himself keep a feast day, and he's seeing the punishments come across or come upon Israel. He's seeing his nations of people being punished for disobedience, right? And that's what's going on here, right? Finding a dead body of your brother in the middle of a marketplace, like that's a tough place to be. And so many of our people grow up, they got cousins that were shot, brothers that were shot, friends that were shot, you know
Uh,
all the loss that we suffer as a nation of people. Like
right.
there's a lot of sad stories in Israel, right? And we're going through those things because we disobey the Most High, right? Salakia, let's go to we're in Tobit chapter 2. Let's go to verse 8. Or Salakia, we're at verse 7.
Come on, we're at verse 7. Tobit 2:7. Wherefore I wept, and
Right.
after the going down of the sun, I went and made a grave
Right.
and buried him.
He buried his brother, right? Like a good righteous man should. Keep reading.
Verse 8. But my neighbors mocked me and said, this man is not yet afraid to be put to death for this matter, who fled away, and yet, lo, he buried the dead again.
Right. As I said, Tobit had a warrant out he had a warrant out for him, right? He ran, he was in hiding, he had a warrant out for him. And Tobit was not afraid of going to jail. He did not put his fear or his wants or pleasure over being a good brother to his nation. This is the spirit we got to be in, right? We got to come together. There's a banner below this saying black and brown gather together, brotherhood is a weapon. That's not a joke, man. Right? That's a real statement. We have to come together. We have to join together. We have to fix this nation, right? We got to be like Tobit. We can't be afraid to build our nation. We can't let fear block us from building this nation up,
Right.
right? It's a good thing. What was that? What happened with that George Floyd incident? There was a brother recording him. Like, why are you recording your brother getting choked out? Why don't you run in and push the cop off him?
Con.
Right?
Con.
Moses in Egypt, he killed an Egyptian, right? He saw his brothers being oppressed, and he took out that Egyptian. Righteous men that are ready to lead and build this nation. This is the kind of spirit we have to be in. Tobias wasn't scared to go to jail. He wasn't scared for his life. And the people around him were mocking him, right? They're looking at Tobit like he's crazy. Salaki, not Tobias, Tobit. They're looking at Tobit like he's crazy. This man has a warrant out for his arrest, but Tobit don't care, right? Ecclesiastes 7:7 says, oppression maketh a wise man mad. Right? If you got to do some crazy things to help your people, go for it, man. Right? I'm not in Slacky, and I'm not saying in saying that I'm not saying to do anything stupid. I'm not trying to say that you should you should just go out and start killing people or go out and start um starting a riot or breaking into buildings and this and that, just to get your point out there that you're being oppressed and your people are being oppressed. I'm just trying to say that when it comes to doing something real, like I said with that George Floyd incident, I pray for myself that I don't just sit there and record, you know.
Right.
If I can talk to that brother George Floyd and bring him down and say, just listen to the cops, just comply. If I can take the attention off the cops and off of him and put it on me a little bit, try to diffuse a situation or something. You know what I mean? To help that brother out. I pray I do
Con.
that. Right?
Con. Salakia.
Khan, go ahead.
It's like it's like because our people don't know who they are, it's like they forget about everything that they've gone through, right? That's why you'll see like brothers and sisters dating Esau. After that, they're scared. The Christian church tells them to be so scared that they're not willing to die for their brothers. I pray that none of my brothers are faced with that situation where they have to they see their brother being murdered by some type of law enforcement, and they have so much love for their brother that they go and try to intervene, because I already know that my brothers are going to do it, right? Like if we see someone being murdered by an oppressor, we're probably going to like try our best to stop it, whether it be us going to jail or us losing our life. And that's just how much we love our brothers and sisters. And if we have loved our brothers and sisters that much, George Floyd would still be alive.
Right. Right.
And now I'm not, just like Officer Shar Yuan said, we're not telling you to go and attack police officers. But one rock thrown would have got that police officer off that man's neck.
Right. Something.
Something like, and again, we're not telling you to do that.
Calm. Yeah, man, that's heavy. It's heavy what you're bringing out. Um, and I'm just, Salaki, I'm looking at the time, and I got a whole bunch more to bring out that I'm not going to get through. But I'm just, if I could try to wrap this up a bit. Um,
I think the end of verse 8. We could get to the end of verse 10.
uh, okay, Khan, just read straight through to verse 10, if you could, Baba Kasha.
Kana. Tobit 2 verse 9. The same night also I returned from the burial and slept by the wall of my courtyard, being polluted, and my face was uncovered. Verse 10. And I knew not that there were sparrows in the wall, and my eyes being open, the sparrows muted warm dung into my eyes, and a whiteness came into my eyes, and
Right.
I
So,
went.
do
Khan,
you know what it means when it says whiteness came into my eyes?
Salakia, I'm gonna take a guess at it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right.
Like a blindness.
Right. That's exactly it. This this brother did a whole bunch of stuff for our people, for his nation. And when we get down to verse 10, right, this brother returned from burying another brother, right, burying one of his brethren, his brothers. And as he's just sitting down by a wall looking up, not paying attention, a bird defecates in his eyes. And Tobit goes blind. Like, something so heavy in this is that he was, after all his good works, his heroism, all his honor, the dignity, the respect, everything that he deserves for what he did for his people, he was rewarded with blindness,
Right.
right? That's an unfortunate thing to happen to a brother. And I bring that out to say we got to check ourselves in the way, in the spirit that we're in when we're laboring for the Most High. Like, we can't be focused on, becoming rich, getting a big house, getting a big car, getting all the money and riches in the world for being honorable men and women. We got to do it because it's right. We got to do it because our nation needs it. And if something unfortunate like blindness comes upon us, we can't stop being righteous people,
Right.
right? Like, you look at Christ. He served his people and he died for his people. the reward of this work isn't just something carnal. We're trying to be righteous men and women for something bigger, right? We want to obtain the kingdom. If I'm poor, if I'm rewarded with being poor and no kids and no wife and no house and nothing satisfying or gratifying in this world, I still have to be a righteous brother. Right? Christ told one of his disciples, if you want to get into the kingdom, sell everything that you have. It's hard for somebody who's rich to make it in the kingdom. It's easier for somebody who has nothing because they're not worried about losing anything. They've already lost everything. You meet a man in the world he's lost 2 friends to gun violence. He's lost his house, he's lost his wife, he lost his kids in a fire or some accident. Like a man in the world who isn't afraid to lose something is a force to be reckoned with. Somebody who doesn't care what goes on around them. He doesn't care about going to prison. He doesn't care about losing his wife. He doesn't care about going to prison over this truth. He doesn't care about losing his jobs or his job or his friends over this truth. He doesn't care about losing those things to be a righteous man of God or a righteous brother. Like, that's how we gotta operate. That's the kind of spirit we gotta be in as a people.
Right.
Right? We gotta be in the spirit of Tobit. Right? You keep reading down in Tobit, you'll see that Tobit died. He died blind. You know what I mean? And he was able to impart so many things to his son Tobias before he died. You know what I mean? He taught his family to be righteous, regardless of his situation. And that's the kind of spirit we gotta move in. And so with that, I'm over my time. I'm not gonna keep going. But to that brother and sister I was bringing out, like it's so important to know our history. To Cheyenne Santana Marie Fox and to Greg Ritchie, right? Those are our Indigenous brothers and sisters, right? They grew up here in Canada on different native reserves. And those are the people that we got to remember, right? This is something that's going on in our communities right now. And it's not going to go away until we turn to the Most High. This oppression isn't going to stop until we come together and start keeping these laws, statutes, and commandments.
Right.
Right? So with that, I'm Priest and Officer of 50 Shariwan. With me is Officer of 50 Zabadia. Thank you for coming out. And,
Kana.
yeah, just to everybody, remember your past, remember your history. This Bible is your history book. Learn from your nation, learn from how your nation rised, learn from how your nation fell, right? And just know that if you're willing to obey the Most High, He's going to be with you. He's going to be with us. He's going to fight with us. He's going to fight for us. And we'll be able to come out of this captivity that we're in. So with that, we'll say shalom. I'm going to end up with the Salaki officer. Can I pass it to you?
Khan, you could definitely pass the class to me.
Khan, I'm going to pass it over to Priest and Officer 50 Zabadia, just to end up with the security announcements. And with that, I'm going to end the class. The water for tuning in.
Khan, clap it up. I'm Officer 50 Zabadia. I.S.U.P.K security announcements. We are the I.S.U.P.K, started out at 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York. Rules for new brothers and sisters. When a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to shed themselves of the world. If they need transportation, the teacher will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the head to speak to a brother or sister. There is another 6 months in which the brother and sister will court each other. After this 6-month period, the brother and sister will get permission from the head to marry. Tithes, which was a commandment, Numbers 18:21, Malachi 3 verses 8 to 10. Ma'ashara, which means 10% of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you, give to the treasury department or a teacher. Priest fund, free will offering for priests, not mandatory. Whatsoever amount you would like. Up and coming holy convocations. The next up and coming holy convocation is the Passover. Slovakia, one moment. You just get that Passover. The 52nd annual Passover is just around the corner. Under Commanding General YAHANNA, I.S.U.P.K will be holding the Passover in Houston, Texas. On Thursday, April 22nd, we'll be having the annual slaughter of the lambs. On Friday, April 23rd, we'll be having a pre-Passover mansion party. Saturday, April 24th is the I.S.U.P.K 52nd annual Passover. That will be held at 14149 Player Street, Houston, Texas. On Sunday, April 25th, we'll be having the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It'll be starting at sundown. If anybody wants to come to the Passover, contact your camp leader. Our camp leader contact the camp leader in your zone. Our camp leader is Abon 5000 or Abon UPK on Facebook. You can contact him on Facebook, Abon UPK on Instagram. You could also check out and message I.S.U.P.K Canada on Facebook, on Twitter, or on Instagram, as well as Periscope. Reminder to Akium and Aquaf to check the bulletin board, to check the isupk.com website for any up and coming events. And also, if you want to get into the school, you can check the isupk.com website, go to school locations, and look for the school in your zone and call. If anybody wants to be a trooper in the school, start wearing all black, boots, shirts, pants, and headbands. With that said, we're going to give a courtesy salute to the brothers and a courtesy salute to the sisters. Men of Israel, I.M.A.J.M, which means to stand. We're going to give a courtesy salute to the brothers. Men of Israel, I.M.A.J.M Shabbat. I.M.A.J.M. Barak. Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahshai Barakatha. Yad Yamata, which means hands down. Men of Israel, we're going to give a courtesy salute to the sisters. I.M.A.J.M Shabbat. I.M.A.J.M. Barak. Yahweh Shemar Alafah Ba'Shem Yahshai. Yad Yamata, which means hands down. Class dismissed. Clap it up. If anybody wants the articles that we were reading, the links are in the chat. Shalom, Israel.
Most High in Christ.